happy Wednesday. It is Wes McDonald, and I'm back after a couple of weeks away from Flightware World Live, and I'm with my best buddy, Ken. How are you, Ken?
I am fine, Wes. Good to see you.
You too, man. And you've got some stuff going on there. So where are you?
I am in a Holiday Inn Express, so I'm now qualified to be, like a private wealth manager or a brain surgeon. A lot of different skills that I get from just staying here. Well, yeah. Maybe not. And that is a totally unsponsored plug. But anyway, in Bartow, Florida.
You can't expense it. Where are you again?
Bartow, Florida, which is not far from Tampa, not far from Orlando, about 3 hours from Miami. And this is where I will, not in the Holiday Inn Express, I'm not going to live here, but I will be living in Bartow, Florida sometime after the 1st of September.
Well, congratulations. We were talking about that before we went live, and really super thrilled for you that you found a place. And I know that getting that stress out of the way, we've both recently, been through the selling and buying game in the real estate market. And anyone else that's out there that has been through the same thing knows that it is not fun right now. Things are starting to calm down, but what a gong show.
Yeah, and, it was interesting because you're in a hot housing market. My house was only on the market 3 days and sold for $23,000 plus over asking price.
Wow! So you can't complain about that part.
No, that was the good part. And the aftermath is we'll be in a situation where I won't have a house payment anymore, and that's going to be nice. And we're closer to the places I like to travel out of. I will be in some interesting places coming up in November and December. We'll talk about those when we get closer, but I will be on the show from different places.
Yes, and different ships and countries. And that's actually a good segue into one of your favorite things, Ken. So why don't you ask?
Where are you watching from? Well, we've told you where we are. Well, Wes didn't mention it, but he's in Canada. Just to narrow it down a little bit. But where's everybody else from? We love to know, because this show is for people globally. We have people from the UAE that join us from time to time, from France, from up in the Netherlands. So let us know where you're watching from today.
That's right.
And if you're watching on the replay, put it in the comments so we can respond.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're watching us on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube. Just put it in the comments section, whichever platform you're on, and we'll see it, and we will share it. So, hey, Ken, I just got back, as we were talking about before the show, too. I've actually done 2 shows for the 2 different parts of my life. One was the retail show that I just got back from with my wife in Toronto. And I got the tattoo on there still. Let's see if I can show it off. Show.to, baby. And it's a big retail buying convention that happens every year. And it didn't happen the last 2 years. So like every other show, it was canceled, right? So it's the first time that my wife as a retailer was to be able to get out and, kind of meet with the vendors live, et cetera. So that was good. And then before that, which is kind of inspiring what we're talking about today. What's going on, Greg Walters? Good to see you again, brother. Nice to see you in water.
Just one quick second. And Greg, you've moved.
I was going to say it's a different spot. And hello to you too, sir. Let's find out why he's in a different place.
Anyway, go back to where you were. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, that's okay. What I was saying is that the show that I was at before that was ChannelCon, and that one hadn't happened in a couple of years either. And Ken, I know you're like me, belonging to the MPSA and the stuff that we do for the BTA, and obviously CompTIA is another one of my favorites. The amount of learning that happens at these shows to help us drive our businesses into the future is absolutely astounding, right? And so today we're going to be talking about the top 3 takeaways that I had from CompTIA ChannelCon, and there's some big ones and some things that we really need to start thinking about. One of them actually has turned kind of in my brain and won't let go, and it'll actually be the first one that we're going to talk about because I think it is so absolutely important. And Ken, we talk a lot about what's affecting the office equipment channel, pages disappearing, different workflows, et cetera. But there's a lot of other channels out there, managed services, managed IT, cybersecurity, right? And one of the big impacts that's affecting every single channel is this movement into the cloud, right? And Ken, you and I have been in this place, in this industry for quite a long time. And even as long as 5 or 6 years ago, cloud was still a dirty word, right?
Yeah, it was something that really didn't impact our channel much. If it did, it was just some particular app. And we talked a couple of weeks ago about the fact that and again, this is one of my pet peeves. We need as a channel and as individuals within the channel to be thinking forward. And the cloud's becoming so important today, but 5 years from now, the cloud is going to be, such an integral part of our channel and the way we do business. All of these things.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, I can remember when, the cloud initially was really just for document storage, right? You remember when we started looking at cloud-based document management instead of just file folders on our computers. That's really where it started. And I can remember people being so scared of it. But now it's everything, right? Like there's not a single application which isn't moving into the cloud, right? Even at TigerPaw, we're obviously moving into, we call it TigerPaw Unleashed. And all of the new clients that we sign up are on that program. That's a cloud-based program. And that's universal across the board for any software, provider, right? It's really impacting how that works. And some of the other things, one of the other big ones is servers, right? So anything that's done, any application that people have, a custom application, is no longer hosted internally on servers. That the movement is towards hosting it in Azure, hosting it in other large, AWS cloud platforms. The reason this is important, and I'm going to move on to this because I think everyone's aware of that, though. This is a concept that people are going to hear me talk about and us talk about a lot more coming into the future, right? And I actually stole this one from my friend Matt Lee. He's a cybersecurity specialist. He works at Pax8. And in an interview that I had with him, he raised this, concept of tech debt with me, right? And the whole idea of tech debt is that we've all built our businesses around technology. But, even let's say if we're a managed IT provider and we built our, business around helping people with their servers, helping them with their desktops, helping them with their network, et cetera, right? That can, just like us in the Office Equipment channel, that people are starting to use fewer things. So even though we're seeing fewer pages on the print side, in the IT world, they're starting to see fewer things actually being deployed. And it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, just thinking about that, I kind of use Google Docs. I use Google's mail server. I use some Microsoft. Try to get a Microsoft Office, a hard copy for your computer. It's a challenge. In general, if you get something that's going to reside on your computer, it's because you subscribed to their web-based offering. They want to store your documents there. And it's interesting because as the society in general becomes more mobile and more technology literate, because part of it's a generational shift. I think that the people that are entering the workforce, are replacing people that weren't computer literate, and these are young people that have grown up with a device in their hand. They would, you'd have to surgically remove it probably. They're, one step away from having the chips embedded in their brain, so they don't even need to have a device anymore. Yeah. And so things are going to continue to accelerate toward non-hardware, non-physical devices. It may be that at some point we'll be doing, the most complex device you have is your Chromebook, and at home or wherever you are, you'll have a Wi-Fi router you can connect to that will connect you to your applications, to everything you do in the cloud.
Yeah, it's all going to be virtual, right? And, that's happening already. I know that for my daughter in school, they are Chrome-based, and there are other people that are, Apple-based as well. But the same idea that, the power of the computing device that you're using is really just to be able to that interface with the cloud to those things that you use, right? The computer I'm on right now is actually a pretty expensive gaming laptop that I use for video editing and other things, right? Those days are numbered. I saw it before with media for as everyone knows, and if you don't, I'll tell you, I'm a huge hi-fi fanatic, so I love watching all my movies in 8K. I listen to everything in Dolby Atmos, and the streaming technologies are starting now to broadcast everything in Atmos and up to 8K, UHD quality, right? So the need for that media disappeared. I watched it. We saw it with music, with CDs, right? And we're starting to see it now with devices to access how we work. And so I think that when we look at this idea of tech debt and the cloud, that we've all got to be very careful, especially in the office equipment channel, Ken, because a lot of folks are starting to talk about moving into managed IT, right? It's the great bonanza, the great gold rush. It's like, how are we going to make up for these lost pages? Well, let's get into managed IT. And what this whole concept of everything cloud and tech debt does for me is it says, hold on, put on the brakes. If you're going to invest in the model that exists today, like as a traditional MSP or managed IT provider, you're going to be in trouble, right? That what you need to do when you're investing is to look at this future that is all cloud-based, that is ecosystem-based, and figure out how you can add value for your customers in that layer, right? So Ken, you and I have talked a lot about flat rate billing for managed print. We've seen it come true, right? When people were naysayers, but it's coming. For technology assets are disappearing just like pages are, right?
Exactly. So less switches, less, in fact, I kind of put my foot in my mouth a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about this, and I said something about having a VPN to the server at the office. And I got smacked and said, "Who's going to have a server at the office anymore?" So that is, even somebody that thinks about it as much as I do, and I think about this these kinds of things all the time. We still get sucked into that mindset of the physical environment that we've lived in for so long. And it could very well, again, why have, in some cases, why even have a printer in, for remote office people when they could just dump the job to the local Staples and go pick it up?
Ken, this is sacrilege, right? I don't have a printer in my house. My wife has one at her store. And when I need the odd thing printed off, guess what? I just go down to the store and get it. Like, I literally, if I give you a tour of my office, there's not a single piece of printer paper or a printer, right? So it's, yeah. And we got to eat our own dog food, right? So if we're trying to help people, sort of modernize their workflows, kind of, et cetera. Greg is a great question there. And I want to give my little answer to that anyway, right? So, he's saying, oh, hold on, if we're going to have fewer things and we manage things and things go away, what can we manage? And those 3 question marks are really important because what we have to manage, and you'll see lots of people speaking on this. Actually, PAX 8 makes their business on it, right? Which is to help manage the customer experience, so the CX. So if we're not managing the actual devices, that's not to say that we can't manage the customer experience. And this is one I put out to everyone out there that's watching, that's in a managed IT channel and doesn't like print. They say, I'm not going to do managed print because printers suck and they break and they need toner. And we don't do that. We do everything remotely. The customer experience, helping them to print less, helping them to find different workflows, helping them to secure their print. Yes, I love that, Greg. Yes, manage the process, the experience of work, right? And CX and UX. Yeah, those are the 2. And that's the direction that we're moving into, right? And if you listen to Jay McBain, he's a big proponent of kind of the ecosystem, right? That a lot of people are getting nervous because in the channel, that sort of up-down level that we've always had, where it bleeds down from, let's say the vendor to distribution to the dealer to the customer, that's all going away, right? That a lot of places like AWS, you can buy Office 365 directly from Microsoft. You can buy your cloud storage directly from Amazon and Microsoft, right? That what you need to sell customers are the management and experience layers in between. So that's kind of my rant there. I know there's other people that have a lot of expertise on this.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. The other thing, and this is a huge opportunity in the near term, is help customers manage their transition from the physical environment to the virtual environment. Because most companies, especially where our bread and butter is for most dealers, is a small and mid-sized business. So these are people that are not going to have an IT guy that necessarily understands this. They're going to want to go and they're going to start to see the need to do these things, but they don't have the expertise in-house to do it. So they're going to pay somebody to help them. And the question is, are they going to pay you or are they going to pay your competitor?
Yep, absolutely. And how do you support that ecosystem? That's what you have to figure out, right? So, like I said, you can manage the print stream without ever touching a physical printer or toner cartridge or anything else, right? So that experience. Secure Print's another great one. So you know that in the MPSA we've got quite a few providers that actually do these services, right? If it's PaperCut or Ringdale, where what they do is they provide software to apply rules to help people print more effectively and more securely, right? That's print management, right?
It is print management.
You can install that software and manage the customer experience. And by the way, that stuff is all going cloud-based as well, right? It's happening. All right. So I've got a bit of a tickle in my throat, so I apologize for having to go on mute once in a while. And I think we've, kind of covered that one. And looking at the time, I want to make sure that we get into the other two, right? But
yeah,
we'll finish that one with the cloud everything. Watch your technology debt stack, because you probably got a lot more than you think, and make sure that you're looking at the CX and the UX as how you can make money with your customers in the future. All right, the next one, and this is kind of a critical one, once bitten, and I'll explain this. Oh, and I just do want to point out, I'm going to share my screen for a minute, Ken, and I'll just share this here while we get up there, because I actually wrote this article when I got back. And you can see me and my Tiger Paw friends. Excuse me. At ChannelCon Live. So it was great to be there physically and in person. And we've actually got an article. So if you go to tigerpaw.com, you'll notice that instead of 3, we've actually got 5 takeaways. So there will be 2 takeaways in the article that we're not even going to talk about today. If you want to find out what those are, then head over to tigerpaw.com, click into the resources section, go into the blog, and you'll see this as well as a bunch of other stuff that we do together to create learning to help people grow their businesses, right? So check it out. And that leads into number 2, which is once bitten and after they tag. So probably my favorite session, Ken, of the whole 3 days, because, and actually maybe I'll give a little background, like for those that are watching that have not been to a ChannelCon, it's probably the best setup event that you could imagine, and it'd be a great one to actually take some lessons from. And what they do is they have specific times for learning and specific times to walk on the floor to visit with vendors. So all of the vendors that are there get to go to these sessions as well to learn, right? So you're never, not learning. And that's, as a nonprofit, not-for-profit organization, it's a really good way to do things. So the one session that I was lucky enough to attend actually had 2 dealers which had survived a cyber attack. So they were shut down. Their customers were shut down. They weren't ready for it. And it was absolutely incredible to hear it from their own words, what they went through, how devastating it was, and how they got through it. And then probably most importantly, for people that haven't been through it yet, the things that they would have done differently, the advice that they had given to make sure that if you're planning for this, right? CCon is great. Yeah. Adult bevies are the 1 p.m. sessions. Absolutely. Yeah, that one of the things that, or actually some of the other people that were on the panel were actually lawyers. So there was a lawyer there with cybersecurity experience. They had somebody from New York University, NYU, excuse me, who actually talked about the psychological impact that happens, right? Because obviously we're all trying to do a better job of making sure we take care of our mental health, and sort of the impact that happened there. And then also a cyber insurance specialist who was talking about the security, like the insurance, implications of things that had to be done. So really cool session. I took more notes than I've taken probably in a session in years, right? I'll actually be interviewing one of the dealers to talk about their experience going through that. So stay tuned. That will be in an upcoming Tiger Paw, interview, but just incredible. The takeaways that, I got from that, one of them, Ken, was, what do you think the word is that you should never use when you're reaching out to your customers to let them know that you've got a problem?
Hacked.
That's a good one. Yeah. So hacked is not a word that you should ever use. And actually we should put together a top 5 list, and there's legal ramifications for that, right? But the one I found fascinating is another one. Maybe come up with another one for me.
ransomware.
Yeah, so it's another one, the specific cause of the event. And I'll give this away now, unless one of our viewers want to try and throw in a guess. We do love your comments and everything else. So what word should you never use? Let's see here. What word should you never use? Put your questions and comments in when you're responding to your customers about, and, and I can't use one of the words yet because I don't want to give it away, but I'll give one of the words. And this came right from the legal counsel that was on the panel. And they said, what word should you never use? They didn't even finish the sentence before she said breach. Never use the word breach, right? Because the word breach, what it says from a legal perspective is that your defenses weren't strong enough, right? In other words, it was your fault, right? So if your wall is breached, that means your wall wasn't good enough, and there could be some implications, for that from a legal standpoint, right? Oh, there he is, OJ. Yep, absolutely. Sorry, I stole your thunder there, buddy, but yeah, so just fascinating. I never thought of it that way, right? So you know what they call it, Ken?
What?
A reportable incident.
Okay.
So the incident was strong enough that legally it requires you to report that to affected parties. But it was an incident, and that doesn't say that it's your fault. It just says that there was an incident, it was reportable, and you reported it, right? The other thing I like, though, is one of the dealers that was on the panel said, where you have to be careful once lawyers get involved, is not to use legal speak for everything. So if you're like a lot of small business owners, your relationship with your customer is the most important thing. And they know your voice when you speak to them. And if all of a sudden they get an email that's just all legalese, and that's not your voice, you break their trust. So he was talking about how he spent a lot of time working with legal counsel to make sure that when they prepared the message, that it was from his voice, right?
Yeah. Well, he had to stop for just a second. I'm going to throw something in, and this is one of those. I have a few pet peeves. Those of you that know me, that the list is really long. But what I would say is this is the kind of thing that you need to make sure your disaster plan covers. So in the event that you have a plan in place of how to communicate to your customers, what to do to resolve it, there is so much to this. And I think that'd be a good show for us down the road, is to talk about disaster planning, because I've seen so many companies that don't have one that works.
So it's funny, Ken, that you bring that up, because when they asked them what they would have done differently, all of them talked about their DR planning. All of them. They're saying, yes, we have to have like a way to actually do this, like a method. And one of the dealers said that they actually had a disaster recovery plan, but guess where it was?
on the computer that was held ransom.
Yeah. So they couldn't even get access to their DR plan, right? So it comes back. I was actually laughing a bit because we talked about paper disappearing. And they said, well, how do you get around that? And they said, good old-fashioned binders. Everything's printed. They have 3 copies. They're all stored in different places with different people, and they have that paper backup, right? So, yeah, so that was really cool. And I'll be talking more about that. Like I said, I've got an interview. Reportable incident, I know, right? But you know what I mean? Like, Greg, what did you say? Exposed? That's a bad word. Breach? That's a bad word. Hacked?
Intrusion would be a bad word.
Intrusion would be another one, absolutely, right? So, it's important, though, because it is, when you think about it, you want to do right by your customers, but you do not want to expose yourself in ways by your language, right? So make sure you don't.
It's kind of like jumping out of the car wreck and out of an accident and saying, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, it was my fault.
Right. Never say that. No. And maybe it is, and that'll come out, and the insurance will take care of it, and lawyers will, but certainly do not put yourself in a worse position than you're already in. Because at the end of the day, it's not your fault. It's these hackers, right? It is these people that are breaking into our systems and trying to make our lives hell. So protect yourselves. Let's make sure that they take the damage. All right. If I can continue to survive without coughing anymore here. The third one, this is really cool too. So Ken, in our industry, we have these things called mega dealers. And what do they do in the channel?
Pac-Man. They're, running around eating up the little dealers.
Yeah. And
some mid-sized dealers and even some big dealers.
Yep. Yeah, and they're monsters, right? Like you look at the size of some of these mega dealers now, anywhere from 240 to $400 million a year. They're national, and they continue to acquire, and they're growing that base. And guess where else it's happening? In the MSP channel, right? They actually had a dedicated session on how to become acquisition ready. And I did love this because a lot of people think, well, good grief, what if I don't want to sell? I've actually written blogs about this for Tiger Paw, that you should always prepare your business as if it were ready to sell, right? Because then if the day comes today or 10 years from now, you have so much less work to do to be able to get it ready. And at the end of the day, a business that's attractive for somebody to buy is one that's running efficiently, that's profitable, that is repeatable, etc. Right? The same things that make it appealing for someone to purchase are the same things that make running it on a day-to-day basis a great business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's happening. You look at the MSPs, they are being gobbled up left, right, and center right now, Ken. They had a dedicated session, and I didn't get to go to that one because I had a competing session. But in all the sessions that I was in, that topic came up about acquisition, right? So this phenomenon, it kind of bothers me, Ken. You can tell me your feelings, right? But I love choice, right? Consumer choice. And I wonder when you look at the world right now with the likes of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, even the mega dealers, and I've got friends that run mega dealerships, so it's not a slight, but the less choice we have in the marketplace, what does that do for the customer, right?
Yeah, and you think about it, as choice diminishes, prices tend to go up. So there are reasons, and I love what you said about that they should have an exit strategy. There's a principle that I firmly believe every dealer, it's one of those things I teach in the service management class, is that you want to begin with the end in mind. You want to know where you're going. And too many dealers just are making it up every day as they go along, which is why building a business plan is such a critical piece of there should be a critical piece of their strategy.
Yeah, and I know you've spoken about that at different events and stuff as well, right? That business planning part, having these 3 to 5 year plans, right? That, at least where you're going, right? And sometimes, you're on the journey and you're on a mountainside cliff and a rock falls down and blocks the one road you thought you were going to use, and you might have to make adjustments. But you probably go back around once you get around to try and get to that same place that you were headed, right? It allows you to do that. And maybe read Greg Walter's comment there, because I think this is a good one to speak to.
He says, I swear there is so many legal issues and exposure that I might tell folks not to get into an SOC or offering security services. Everybody's looking for someone to blame. Why get into the bullseye?
Yeah, and that is true, right? That there's a certain amount of exposure. And I just had this conversation with my marketing director at Tiger Paw. I wrote a blog, and one of the things I was talking about was, kind of things that you can do instead of managed IT, right? And in the cybersecurity section, we obviously talked about that exposure, right? That there are, limits, and hence having to use language like reportable incident, etc. But at the end of the day, it's anywhere from $90 to $150 a seat, which allows you a lot of room to make sure that you got the legal protection that you need, and to make sure that you have the insurance, the cyber insurance as well, that you need to be able to, to do it. So there are a lot of high risk businesses out there that are extremely profitable. And yes, there are times when you have to deal with legal stuff and payouts and everything else. But again, Ken, as you mentioned, as long as that's built into the business plan, then you're going to be okay, right? Cybersecurity.
And most people are not ever going to do this themselves. In other words, they're not going to try to design it. They're going to be reselling somebody else's product. And so the ultimate liability will be on the vendor that provided the service. As a middleman, you might have a little exposure. As Wes said, get insurance, make sure that that your agreements are such that you're protected, and then make some money on the process.
Well, I'm going to jump back to this tech debt one too, right? So again, many thanks to my brother, Matt Lee. This is his thing, so I'm throwing it out there. That when we were speaking about cybersecurity, he mentioned that because so much stuff's going to the cloud, it actually makes it easier to try and manage those security endpoints, right? Because there are fewer of them. Now, it also makes it easier to hack because the troublemakers out there only have one thing to try and hack now instead of 30, right? But what he said was that this tech debt idea of this liability and everything else is that everything is moving up to a single layer for that security. It's not there yet, but one day, it kind of will be. And we have to manage it. He went as far as to say, and Matt, I'm sorry if I misquote you. You can tell me, brother. Just leave a comment. But he says there's no such thing as an MSSP. Do you know what that is, Ken?
Managed Security Services Provider.
Right. And he said there's no such thing. There's only MSPs, because if you're touching the data, right, in any way, you're obligated to protect it. In other words, you can't do one or the other. If you're going to manage the data, you got to protect the data, right? And I find that very fascinating. So this whole concept of, again, there are MSSPs out there. If you're watching, I know that's, what you call your business, but I love how provocative that statement is, which is to say that somebody has to take responsibility for that. If you're going to touch the data and manage it, then you've also got to do the security, right? So, and Greg, I'm by no means an expert in this in any way whatsoever, right? But it just seems inevitable, right? That as long as the business plan is sound and you build in whatever the economics are of the averages of lawsuits and things like that, they're probably going to happen. But as long as they're in the business plan, then you're going to be okay, right? And I'll say it again, $90 to $150 per seat just for security services, right? That's a lot of money. All right. So many grammar. Yeah, I get nailed on grammar all the time, buddy. All right. Well, that's it. Just in respect for everyone's time, Ken, we are at the half hour. Before we go any further, just let people know when we talk about, I did put a post out this morning about leveling up, and it was kind of a game reference, but it's something that we all do or should be doing on a regular basis, right? And Ken and I are actually hosting a session on compensation. So you can just go to flatrate.world/compensation and get registered. So we'll be revealing the final date soon enough. And we'll actually be running through different compensation models to help us actually move into the future world. As everything goes to as a service, as we talked about today, fewer things are going to be managed. It's going to be more UX and CX. How do you compensate your reps for that in a world where things are disappearing? So we'll be...
fewer things are going to be sold too.
Yes, absolutely, right? So for everybody that tuned in today, can't thank you enough, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks, Ken.
All right. It was fun as always.
And thanks for tuning in, everybody.